All right. Looks like we are all here now. So, welcome everybody to today's live presentation with ROUSH CleanTech. We're going to do a walk around comparison of a propane bus with a diesel bus. And after we look at that video, we're going to be having a Q&A session with Adam Wilcom, who is with ROUSH CleanTech. Hi, Adam. We're going to go ahead and get the video started now. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send a message to the host and I'll get those to Adam. And if you're on Facebook, you can just make some comments on any questions that you have, and Adam will be sure to answer those as well. So let me go ahead and get the video started here. One moment.
Hi, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Adam.
We're with ROUSH CleanTech, and today we're on site to look at a new propane-powered Bluebird school bus and compare it to a new diesel-powered school bus. There's a few things that we want to look at that are important to fleets and drivers alike, and we want to measure those and share our results with you. Adam, would you explain a little bit more about what you're going to test?
So what I have here is a professional decibel meter. What we're going to do is we're going to take 3 readings. We're going to take a decibel reading at acceleration, full acceleration. We're going to take a decibel reading at idle, and then we're also going to take a decibel reading here in the loading zone where the students spend a lot of their time.
We're also going to go out and check some important performance characteristics. So we have a GPS device that we'll use on both vehicles that'll download information to an app that's going to share those critical thresholds for us. So we're going to focus today on 0 to 30 and also 0 to 60 and see what kind of acceleration times these two vehicles put down. We also want to look at another thing that's important to fleets, which is maintenance and upkeep. So how are we going to do that, Adam?
So what we're going to do is we're going to take both of these buses inside a shop. We're going to put them up on a lift. What we're going to do is we're going to take a deep dive and look at all the emissions components that are under these buses. What we're also going to do is take a look at a few preventative maintenance items just to see how the diesel stacks up to the propane.
Awesome. Well, if you're ready, let's go pull these up on the rack.
All right, let's get started.
We're underneath a new Bluebird school bus powered by propane and a ROUSH CleanTech engine. Today we're going to look at the emission system that's on this bus and how it differs from a modern day diesel school bus. So if we start with where the exhaust leaves the engine through the exhaust manifolds, up here you'll actually see where it comes down this Y pipe and it has 2 upstream O2 sensors. So those are coupled with 1 downstream O2 sensor which is located here on the catalytic converter. But this is the bulk of your entire emission system. This passive catalyst, which actually allows all of those emissions constituents to be cleaned up before it leaves the tailpipe of the school bus. Past this, it's going to go through a connection pipe that's going to go to your muffler, and that's the entirety of your exhaust system on a propane ROUSH-powered school bus. This is coupled together with an evaporative emissions canister, which is located here, and the purpose of this device is to capture the fuel from the fuel rails once the engine is shut down. So all of the fuel that's at the engine fuel rail is going to come back and be captured in this evaporative emissions canister. And then later on, whether it be a day or weeks later when the vehicle started back up, this canister is going to be vacuumed back out by the engine and sealed up again. So that can repeat the cycle again and again. But that's the entirety of our emission system under this. That coupled with the ROUSH CleanTech calibration and engine certification makes this simple emission system possible on this school bus. Okay, now we're underneath a modern diesel school bus, and we're going to show you the comparison of the emission systems and the complexity that we have associated with a diesel versus what we had on the propane school bus. So starting with where the exhaust leaves the engine and actually comes through the turbo downpipe, it's going to follow this path, and its first stop is going to be right over here at the DPF. That stands for diesel particulate filter. So if you remember the black soot that used to come out of diesel tailpipes, that has to be caught today by modern day emission standards. So the first stop will be at this DPF canister where it's going to capture all of that soot before it leaves the tailpipe. It's going to follow that path through the canister, come out of this exit pipe, and then it's going to go through a diesel exhaust fluid injector system. So this module and this doser is actually going to take diesel exhaust fluid from the tank that we're going to look at in a little bit, and it's going to inject this into this stream so that it can then go through the second canister, which is a selective catalyst reduction canister. That's where you're going to have a chemical reaction to reduce the amount of NOx that's in the emissions before it leaves the tailpipe of the bus. After it leaves this, it's going to head out and go through a muffler and through a tailpipe through the back of the bus. So before we go back there and look at that, we'll look at the diesel exhaust fluid tank. So this is filled with usually 10 to 15 gallons of diesel exhaust fluid, which is a concentration that helps with the catalyst reduction to reduce the NOx out of the system. There's a lot that goes on with this system, everything from quality sensors to dosing levels, sump pumps, and injection system to allow this entire active system to work together to get to the tailpipe emission standards that we have today.
Hi, this is Adam with ROUSH CleanTech. We find ourselves under a new Bluebird propane-powered school bus with the ROUSH engine and fuel system. What I want to highlight underneath the bus right now is the simplicity of the preventive maintenance related to oil changes. What we have here is a $4 off-the-shelf spin-on filter and an oil pan that holds 7 quarts of oil. As you can see, compared to modern-day diesel, this is about as simple as it gets. So we just got done looking at the ROUSH engine with the inexpensive spin-on oil filter and 7 quarts of oil. What we have here is a modern-day diesel engine where we have a large filter that holds 3 quarts of oil, a spin-on fuel water separator, and a large oil pan that holds 18 quarts of oil. So one of the most important areas outside the bus for noise levels is the loading zone. That's where the students spend a significant amount of their time. Outside the diesel bus, you can see the decibels are at about 76. So we're going to now compare that next to the Bluebird propane-powered bus. So now we're here next to the Bluebird propane-powered school bus. We're going to take another decibel reading and see how it compares to the diesel-powered bus. So we're at about 62 decibels on the propane-powered bus, over 10 decibels lower. That's quite a bit of difference.
So now we're going to go out and do a test drive in the propane-powered Bluebird Vision. We've got our Draggy GPS device hooked up. We're ready to take some measurements of acceleration. And we're also going to grab some sound measurements as well, so decibel in our cabin, also by the driver's area, and a few different, so we can compare them to the diesel buses that we test later. So now we're going to use our decibel meter to take a measurement of what kind of sound we have in the driver's area when the bus is at idle with nothing else on. So I'm going to hand this to Ken, and he can give us a reading up there right where he is. So it looks like about 53 or so when I'm not talking, so really quiet driver's area with this vehicle in drive at idle with everything else off. Thanks, Ken. So now we're cruising in the propane Bluebird school bus, and at highway speeds at about 55 miles an hour, we're running at about 2,000 RPM. So really comfortable cruise, very quiet in the cabin while we're doing that. Extremely smooth, and we also took some acceleration tests, which we'll compare against the diesel bus here on that same exact route that we're doing with the propane bus. Okay, so now we've got the entire team loaded into a newer diesel bus. We're going to go out and do the same route that we did with the propane bus. Take some of the same measurements, acceleration, and we also want to know, have we had any changes in the cabin decibels and how much noise the driver's hearing while they're operating the vehicle. So we're going to go out and check out those routes, repeat them, and then we'll show you the side-by-side comparison of how we finished today. And we're at a standing idle with nothing on, trying to find out what our driver's area decibel reading is. So when we take a pause here, we're at about 60.5 decibels. And if we compare that to the propane bus, that was at about 53.5 decibels. A lot of people ask us, does propane have the power and torque that they're used to with their diesels? Because they need that throttle response to get out into traffic, get a full load across the road quickly. So we're going to take a 0 to 30 and 0 to 60 measurement. And for reference, the propane did the 0 to 30 on this route at this exact same spot at 7.21, and it did 0 to 60 at 25.88. So now we're going to get out there, we're going to try it with the diesel bus, and we're going to see what the comparison is. All right, 0 to 30 was hit at 10.9 seconds versus 7.21 in the propane. We're trucking along to 60, trying to get up to highway speed. There we go, bingo at 60, and that's 39.79 seconds. I think there's a lot of information out there, misinformation, that diesels have a lot more power and that it causes them to be able to accelerate faster. And I think what we found is that with more horsepower on the propane and the way that we have the transmission and the driveline set up, is that it's actually not the case. The propane is considerably quicker in a lot of ways, especially where it matters. That snappiness off the line to get moving. I really think that the propane outshined, and we saw it here in the numbers, you know, jumping up considerably, 3 seconds plus on 0 to 30, and then about 14, 15 seconds when we're talking about 0 to 60. So I think drivers will really like that. You couple that with how quiet they are, and it's a better driving experience altogether. So we've had a lot of fun today with these two buses. We've had a new diesel bus and a new Bluebird propane bus, and we got to put them through a lot of different comparisons. The first one we want to talk about, and some of the results we have, are the decibel readings that we took.
Yeah, the results were pretty surprising. So at idle, we were 7 decibels quieter with the Bluebird propane powered bus over the diesel bus. At wide open throttle, surprisingly, the propane bus was a little bit higher decibel reading. And we think that is because the higher horsepower of the propane engine, the higher RPM of the propane engine made it a little bit louder. Really, I think the most shocking result for me was we were 14 decibels quieter in the loading zone. So where the students are getting on and off the bus at the beginning and the end of the day, 14 decibels is really a significant number.
And that's really a critical communication zone, because that's where a driver's talking to students that are getting on and getting off that bus.
Right, that's what I thought. So how'd the emission system look?
So we lifted the two buses up, and we really got a great view of what the mechanics and maintenance people have to deal with regularly. So we looked at the propane bus, and really it's a simple passive emission system. Outside of a catalytic converter and a handful of O2 sensors, it's a very basic system, and the longevity of it should be supported right along with it. And to go a little bit further with that simple emission system, we're also meeting a low level of NOx with that emission system and no extra hardware. By comparison, when we lifted up the diesel bus, there was a lot of componentry and stuff outside of the diesel engine that you're going to have to look at and work on for the entire life cycle of that bus. Whether we're talking about the diesel emission filter, or fluid, the diesel particulate filter, the SCR system, all those dosing controls and the sensors that we saw in that system that go along with it, it's going to be a considerable service item with a lot of cost associated with it. What do we see, Adam, though, on the maintenance side?
So we didn't spend a whole lot of time looking at maintenance, and honestly it's because with the propane bus there really isn't that much to maintain. We took a look at the oil filter, the oil pan with the amount of oil that you have to put in the bus. The propane bus really shines in that department, you know, with the one filter and the small amount of oil that goes in that thing. So as far as maintenance goes, really not a whole lot to talk about. On the diesel side, you do have a couple, you know, an extra filter or two, more oil. So yeah, a little bit more to maintain on the diesel side.
Well, we also went out and got these buses on the road because we wanted to know if the old adage of a diesel bus has more power really held true. So we used our GPS device and we measured both these vehicles on the exact same route, and we checked out the 0 to 30 and 0 to 60 acceleration times. And what we found was that not only did the propane do better, it did considerably better. On the 0 to 30, we saw almost a full 4 seconds. It was about 3 seconds and change acceleration improvement over the diesel. That same route on 0 to 60, almost 14 seconds faster. So even though that diesel has more torque than the propane bus, what we found out is that the rubber just doesn't meet the road, and the propane bus outperforms in both categories. So what do you think really overall we learned today, Adam?
Well, I think you can draw some pretty good conclusions. You know, really everybody's pretty much in conclusion that propane buses can save you money.
Absolutely.
They're better for the environment. Where we really get a lot of back and forth with fleet owners are,
Do you sacrifice anything?
yeah, propane buses, maybe they're harder to work on, you need specialized tools. I think what we really found today is it's just not true.
So you could have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I think you could, and the fact that it's a lot quieter and a better experience for the children riding the bus, I think you can't really discount that as well.
Yeah, I think as riding on both buses today, as a driver and a rider, I think my experience was better both on the propane bus. Quieter, we could talk easily amongst each other, and we had better throttle response to get out into the high-speed traffic.
Right, and I don't know about you, but if I was working on a bus, those emission systems we took a look at, I mean, I know which one I would choose. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So thanks for joining us today and looking at our comparison between these two buses. To learn more about ROUSH CleanTech, please visit us at roushcleantech.com. Thank you.
All right, Adam. So we actually have a few questions already. And by the way, just to remind everybody, if you have a question, feel free to send a chat message to the host here in Zoom. If you're on Facebook Live, just make a comment and we will notate your question and send it to Adam. So, Adam, the first question I actually have for you is, by the way, let me make sure that you're unmuted, Adam, because we need, are you good? All right, let me get you taken care of here. That way you can answer questions for us.
There we go.
There
Should
we
be
go.
able to hear me now. Thanks.
Wonderful. Okay, so the first question that I have for you is talking about the two different performance options that we have for the propane bus. We have the economy and performance settings. Can you talk more about that?
So the economy and performance settings, we only have one rating for the propane buses these days. So it's 325 horsepower. So that's the only rating. What you may be referring to as far as economy and performance is Allison offers economy and performance settings for their transmission. So that may be what you're referring to there. But as far as the propane powertrain, just one horsepower rating is what you get for that.
I think that in the past we had offered an econo shift and a power shift option, but I'm not sure if we do anymore. So that's a good question.
Sure.
There was another question. Can you talk more about the current engine that we have, the 6.8 liter Ford engine that we utilize?
Yeah, the 6.8 liter really is Ford's probably their most successful medium duty truck engine, gas truck engine. They've had several diesel engines obviously over the years, but when you look at the engines that Ford has put out over the years, anybody that's a Ford fan or a fan of maybe the diesel trucks, has an F-250. Over the years, they've had the 7.2 liter diesel, the 6 liter diesel, the 6.4 liter diesel. Now they're on the 6.7 liter diesel. Throughout that whole period of time, the 6.8 liter V10 was in production. So they switched over all those diesel engines because, one was problematic in certain areas, but over a period of almost 20 years, they had that same gasoline engine. And the reason, just because it was so reliable. The biggest fleet users in the country, companies like U-Haul, if you've rented a U-Haul truck in the last 30 years, chances are it probably had a V10 engine in it, the same engine that's in these school buses. So really, it's the reliability that has made that engine last as long as it has. At one point, Ford was building 100,000 of those engines a year. So super high volume. There's a ton of them out there, which means down the road, the parts are relatively inexpensive because when you build a ton of them, it just drives the cost down, right? So the fact that there's so many of these engines out there, when you go to buy replacement parts, it's just, they're very cost effective.
Excellent. So another question I had was, will the propane bus have more power going out to mountains and snow and rainy conditions? But I think you could talk about cold weather a little bit there too.
Yeah, so we get that question a lot. How does it handle on certain routes? And the answer I try to be. I don't try to be specific, but no two school bus routes are the same. No two drivers are the same. You have different capacities. You have different option packages, so the weights on the bus are different. But the propane buses do very well in all conditions. Like Justine said, one of the places they really excel is in the cold weather climates. We have some really large fleets, especially in Canada, One fleet in Alberta, actually, one of the coldest places in North America, they run over 700 propane powered school buses. So they really, because we're doing liquid injection now with our propane system. Back, if you've been in this industry, since the 80s, I know a lot of you have. You may be familiar with the propane systems that were tried back then. They were all vapor systems. So if it was too hot, they didn't work very well, and if it was too cold, they didn't work very well. But now we're doing liquid propane injection, so it's injected into the engine just like gasoline. So really, the atmospheric conditions don't really play a part there. So yeah, I wish I could be more specific on the mountain grades. I'll tell you, it'll handle any grade out there. It's like I said, no two routes are the same, and no two buses are the same. They all have different passenger capacities and weights. So it's hard to give a specific answer on that.
Right. And I actually got a very interesting question. Someone from Puerto Rico said that they operate a lot of diesel there, and they were wondering how propane would perform in their climate. But also, like, just to add to that question, propane availability in Puerto Rico, I'm not even sure what that looks like. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the availability is either. I'll tell you, it's there. There's propane widely available, even in Central America, South America, North America, of course. But I'm sure you can. I don't know if Puerto Rico would be included, but the U.S. Department of Energy has a website that allows you to go and look up propane fueling stations. If you were to go into Google and just simply type, propane fueling stations, you would probably get a hit for that website. But you can go in and search and find where your closest propane fueling station is located. The nice thing about propane is, obviously, there's a ton of people using propane in Puerto Rico. We use it for all sorts of different things, which is why it's so widely available. But fuel providers, companies like AmeriGas, companies ProGas, CHS, there's a ton of propane providers out there. But if you were to find a company in Puerto Rico that sold propane and told them you were interested in buying some propane school buses, they would probably be willing to give you the fueling station at almost no cost, just because of the amount of gallons that you're going to be buying. You keep those buses a long time, you buy a lot of propane. So the people who sell propane really like that. One propane school bus is the equivalent of one house, or I'm sorry, one house that's heated by propane is the equivalent of 10 school buses. So it's really, it's a lot of gallons for them, and they really like to sign up school buses. So that's why it's so easy to get the infrastructure side. It's really low cost compared to any other alternative fuel. So it's one benefit from propane for sure.
Awesome. We had another question. So they were asking what the difference between a hybrid bus and a propane bus is. And I mean, we don't have a hybrid bus. I don't believe there are any on the market at this time. They're all fueled by something specific or powered by electric, correct?
Yeah, hybrid was a pretty short-lived technology in the school bus market. There was a few hybrids available in about 10 years ago, maybe even as few as 5 years ago. There was a few being built by the different manufacturers, but it's really kind of gone by the wayside. You'll even see that in the passenger car market. We're quickly moving to fully electric versus hybrid. I guess it's kind of we're almost kind of out of the hybrid phase, moving it right into electric and alternative fuels like propane and CNG. So, yeah, hybrid. There was a few hybrid school buses sold over the years, but not very many.
I think that Bluebird did delve into that technology about a decade ago, but we just gave it a try. But like you said, I think it's kind of lived out its time.
Yeah, Eaton was making a system. They partnered with Cummins to make a hybrid drivetrain, and I know a few of those were sold across the country, but it was relatively short-lived. I think they were only available for 5 or 6 years. So.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of how to word this question. Yes, we are getting a lot of questions about electric, and I just want to let we will have 2 more webinars that are just dedicated to electric coming up. So we'll definitely talk about electric at that time. And we have a lot of information on our website. And one thing I will say is that electric is wonderful, but propane, I believe, is equally wonderful. It works a lot better in some instances for some districts. Adam, do you want to talk to that? Like, what buses work best for people?
Yeah, obviously, if you look any of the publications, the school bus industry right now is really focused on electric for sure. I believe electric and propane can coincide together. I think the main limitation to electric right now is range, right? Your electric buses, you're only getting about 120 miles worth of range right now, which is great. I mean, that'll work for a lot of routes in the U.S., certainly urban routes. But there's a ton of kids that live, out in the country and have to ride the bus an hour each way every day. I was one of them when I was growing up. I rode the bus 45 minutes each way. And 120 miles of range just isn't going to cut it for those types of routes. So for districts, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's no silver bullet to this emissions sustainability problem we have right now. Electric buses are great, zero tailpipe emissions are great, but there's, like I said, there's certain duty cycles where it's just that's not going to cut it, So you've got to have an alternative, and I think fleet owners that are looking to reduce their maintenance, looking to save money, and looking to reduce their carbon footprint and their effect on their community can look to propane for that solution. So I think the two can coexist together. And let's not skirt over the cost issue, right? I mean, electric buses are extremely expensive. If you've got a fleet of 100 buses and they're old diesels and you've got to replace them over the next 10 years, finding the money to buy 100 electric buses probably isn't going to be realistic. So again, going back to if you want to do something positive for the community and reduce the carbon footprint, propane is an excellent option. You can get into propane for really not that much more than diesel. It's a very cost-effective cost-effective solution. Usually, the money that you would pay extra for a propane bus, you'll get that back in about 2 years is usually what we see with the miles that school buses run. So it really is a good option. And then, like I said, it can coexist in conjunction with electric. We have a ton of fleets already. Well, I don't know if I'd say a ton, but because electric buses are kind of just getting out there right now, but we have a lot of fleets that are getting their first electric buses, and their plan is to buy both electric and propane. The two can coexist. You don't have to pick just one. So that's the good thing about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Electric is still evolving, right? The technology is improving every day. So the electric buses we have now will, like in the next 5-10 years, we're going to see a vast improvement in range and in cost. But I think propane's a great solution for most districts. I really do think that pretty much anyone could do propane. With the cost involved and the maintenance savings over time, the TCO message is there. So
yeah, for districts that need to save money now and still want to make a positive effect on the environment, I think the fact that you can save money and also get those environmental benefits, like you said, Justine. I mean, that makes propane a great fit for a lot of school districts. I keep going back. I mean, when I participate in a lot of these, environmental forums and industry groups that, talk about transportation's effects on the environment. And pretty much the conclusion by everybody is we're never going to have just one silver bullet. There's going to be a number of different fuels that are going to solve this problem that we have, with the environmental impacts of transportation. And, CNG, propane, electric, they're all gonna play a factor. I think the one that is declining the most is probably diesel. Unfortunately, because the diesel engine used to be such a simple thing. It's become incredibly complex with the emissions technology that's on those buses now. Which, by the way, the fact that they get them to be as clean as that they are is an engineering marvel. They're incredibly complex machines now. But there's more and more fleets that are looking to propane, gasoline, electric. There's just there's a simpler way to do it now. It's not like it was 5 years ago where you could buy any engine you wanted as long as it was red. So you have options, and it's I don't envy transportation directors and fleet managers these days, because you have a lot of information to digest and make a decision to pick a fuel to go forward with, and it's really a lot of information out there. So it can be overwhelming.
So we're running to the end of this presentation, but there were a couple of comments here about like how often refueling would have to happen, and then the comparison of like fuel economy from propane to diesel. And one thing I always tell people is that propane does get less on as far as miles per gallon when compared to diesel. That the miles per gallon is different depending on the driver, obviously, and that goes for anything. But that the cost per mile is what you really need to concentrate on, right?
Yeah, that's true. So that is one of the disadvantages of propane as a fuel is it has a little bit less energy content than both gasoline or diesel. So if you had if you had the same amount of propane, same amount of diesel, same amount of gasoline, the energy content that you would get out of propane when you burned it in the engine would be less than gasoline or diesel. Um, why that really doesn't matter as much in this case is because propane, the cost is about 50% of that of diesel and gasoline almost consistently. If you go back even 20 years, you'll see that the cost of 1 gallon of propane is about 50% that of diesel and propane. So, like Justine said, when you look at how much a bus costs you to run per mile, you factor in things like how much does it cost me to change the oil, how much does it cost me just to maintain the vehicle, basic preventive maintenance to be in warranty compliance, right? How much does that cost? And then you look at how much am I paying for fuel? What's my fuel economy? How long am I going to keep the bus? How many miles do I run per year? And then when you factor all those things in and you come to a conclusion, you're going to get a cost per mile. And with the fuel savings that you realize with propane, because it is a relatively cheap fuel. I mean, we have some districts out there buying propane for 75 cents a gallon right now. You can really see you'll save on average, 25, 30% what you would comparatively be at a cost per mile on diesel. So a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of folks buying gasoline buses right now. And when you look at a cost per mile, it's actually the gasoline bus can be the most expensive option because it doesn't get as good as fuel economy as diesel, but the fuel cost is about the same as diesel. So you're paying about the same for fuel, but getting worse fuel economy. So you gotta, that's where all this information really comes into it. It's just when you're looking at choosing an alternative fuel, you've got to consider all these things because you're going to have to live with it for 10, 15, 20 years in some cases. It really cost per mile is a great way to look at it because a lot of some of the country's largest trucking fleets, that's how they make their financial decisions. They look at how much is this truck going to cost per mile, and that's how they make decisions. I have I'll keep this as short as possible, but we have some fleets. One fleet comes to mind in Iowa that runs a lot of propane buses, and they run propane and diesel, but they keep excellent records. They know what every single bus costs them, and they even factor in repairs. So if they get a $5,000 repair bill, they factor that into their cost per mile. So at the end of the year, they can say, bus 176 cost me 89 cents a mile, including fuel, maintenance, repairs, everything. Some of their propane buses are costing them 20, 25 cents a mile. Some of their older diesel buses are costing them almost $2 a mile to run. So when you think 15,000 miles per year, that bus is costing that school district $30,000 a year just to put on the road. So it's good to know that information so you can know what buses you need to get rid of.
So one more question before we conclude.
Sure.
Can private contractors get a discount on propane fuel?
Really, how the propane suppliers work that is it's based on the amount of gallons that you're going to purchase at one time. So if you had, say you wanted to buy 2 propane buses and you just wanted to get a really small fuel system or fueling infrastructure that could be, maybe it's a portable infrastructure piece that just gets sit on your lot. Typically, those only have 500 gallons of propane in there. So you're going to be, versus if you went and bought a 30,000 gallon propane tank. So school districts have that much, then they could buy a truckload at a time. So, if you were a private contractor and you wanted to get the best deal on propane, you would want to put in the largest tank that you could. So you were in essence, buying in bulk. Anytime you buy something in bulk, you're going to get a better deal. So that's really kind of how that works. It's just like anything. The more you buy, the better deal you get. So.
Are there any government incentives for propane at this time? I know there were for many years. I'm not sure if they're still going on.
Yeah, that is really, that's really the best thing about propane right now. It's really, there's a lot of funding for electric too, but because propane is so much less upfront cost than electric, you can save so much money right now because of the incentives that are out there. So every state has Volkswagen funding available. Propane qualifies in every state for that funding. So you can go out and you can get, some cases you can get up to $35,000 per bus for a propane replacement for diesel. On the federal government level, there's the fuel tax credit that every government fleet is eligible for. So what that means is every gallon of propane that you use in your fleet, the federal government is going to cut you a check for 36 cents at the end of the year. So if you use, 100,000 gallons of propane in your fleet, they're going to cut you a check for 36 cents times 100,000, and that's the check that you're going to get at the end of the year. So some school districts have taken that money and then they've actually reinvested it into their fleet, and they were able to pay their drivers more. So every school district is different. I don't want to get you all excited and think you're going to get a raise, because you just switched to propane buses. But some districts get to keep that money. Some districts it goes back to the general fund. But some districts are able to take that $100,000 check in some cases and reinvest it into the fleet. So there's so many good incentives out there. There's the DERA program, which Diesel Emissions Reduction Act. That's a program every year they give out money to buy propane buses. So tons and tons of funding out there. That's when people come to me all the time and they say, hey, I want to get out of diesel and I'm deciding between gasoline and propane. Those are, I want to get either one of those. And I say, well, if you get the gasoline bus, yeah, it's going to have the lowest upfront purchase price, but you can't get any of the grant funding. You can't get the 36 cents a gallon fuel credit. You can't get any grant funding to offset the purchase price. If you go with propane, you get access to all those grant funds. And every year there's something different where there's money available for all. So, definitely something to keep in mind. You want to be able to get some of that money because somebody's going to get it. Why shouldn't it be you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we are out of time, but Adam, we have gotten a lot of questions about something, what if people are asking. There are going to be some big announcements about our propane product next year. Can't mention them on this call, but if everybody can just keep an eye on our Facebook page and website, subscribe to our newsletters. We do have some big things coming, and we would love to share that with you sometime next year. We're thinking, mid-year is probably when we'll be announcing that. So
yeah, the next year is going to be extremely exciting for Bluebird and ROUSH CleanTech. I mean, we've been an exclusive partner with Bluebird since ROUSH CleanTech got started, and we've really done amazing things. There's over nearly 20,000 propane school buses on the road these days, running the ROUSH CleanTech fuel system with that green Bluebird emblem on them. And like Justine alluded to, the next 12 months are going to be really exciting for us both. So we're looking forward to it. But be patient. It's going to be exciting when it happens. The next 12 months will be fun. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Adam, for your time. And again, everybody, thank you for your time. We will be posting that walk around video on our Facebook page so that you can see the full clip whenever you like. And we will be emailing it to all of the Zoom participants today. But thank you, Adam, again. And I hope
Thanks
everybody
for having me.
has a great day. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.